Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud, and welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. Nothing changes, even though we are at home right now. Still hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Blair, a lot happening over the weekend. We're going to discuss it on the show. Right now, we're technically in a recruiting quiet period, but as far as what's happening in the lives of recruits, where are we in the recruiting calendar right now?
Well, everyone's on social media following the eclipse, but we're about to enter the eye of the storm, Emily, because official visits are about to return this coming weekend. And then the spring evaluation period kicks off next Monday. So a week from today, college coaches will be hitting the road to start evaluating prospects. We're going to see a lot more activity, more offers, more visits, more commitments. It's going to get really, really silly around here.
We love silly season. So right now we're just kind of gearing up for it. But our evaluators inside 247 Sports are doing a lot of evaluations at 7-on-7 camps and at Elite 11 camps, because that's right, we are getting ready for the Elite 11 finals later this summer. So happening in Oxford, Mississippi over the weekend. Elite 11 regionals, stop number 3 of 8 as the top quarterbacks in the country vie for a spot in the Elite 11 finals in LA later this summer. Our own national recruiting analyst, Cooper Petagna, was there in Oxford and is now here with us to talk about it. Coop, you described it as a gusty afternoon. So it sounds like some of the quarterbacks had some trouble with the wind. I'll start with the number 3 quarterback in the country and Tennessee commit George McIntyre. How did he handle the elements?
Well, it was a very windy day, like you said. I thought George McIntyre kind of struggled a little bit, and this was our first time kind of seeing him in this setting against some of the better arms in the country. We'll talk about Deuce Knight, Tramel Jones. Both those guys earned their invite, but with the likes of George McIntyre, this is a guy, two-sport athlete, basketball background as well, a guy that could play at the next level on the hardwood if he had that opportunity. But, the biggest thing for him is he's got a frame that kind of reminds me of a guy that a lot of people in Knoxville already know, and Nico Imalieva. So when you think about George McIntyre, there's a lot of physical growth still yet to take place. We still like this kid. There's a lot of physical clay there to mold. We really like the athlete. But in terms of the passer, yesterday, Sunday in Oxford, was a really good day to kind of evaluate the arm talent. And I thought George McIntyre, all 3 levels, was a day that he would probably like to go back to the drawing board and would certainly kind of look at himself and say, hey, I can perform better here. That being said, we're excited about the senior season, but he's going to be a really interesting one to watch here over the next couple months.
Cooper, you mentioned Notre Dame commit Deuce Knight, the number 10 quarterback in this 2025 class. He had a strong showing. He punched his ticket to the finals in Los Angeles. A terrific athletic rating as well. We rank number 1 among all participants. What makes him so intriguing to project to the next level?
Well, he's a fascinating one. You think about Deuce Knight and all the physical characteristics that he has. He's over 6'4". He's 200 pounds. He's got a 40+ inch vertical to his name. He also ran in the low 4.5s as well. But the biggest thing with him is he's just got to put it on tape, and he's shown flashes of it, which is why not only is he committed to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, but you got Kalen DeBoer, Lane Kiffin, and a handful of other programs sniffing around Deuce Knight because of what he can do, not only with his arm, but with his legs as well. And I thought yesterday was one of Deuce Knight's best showings that we have seen, at least in that kind of environment, in the combine environment. So we've seen him multiple times over the last 2 years, and this is a guy that's really going to have to take coaching. He's going to have to heed that and then put it into his play. So I'm excited about what he's got coming ahead of him. Just in terms of the physical clay, sky's the limit. So to see him kind of put some of that together this weekend was really positive.
Deuce Knight also punching his ticket to the Elite 11 finals, so we are not done seeing him in this combine-like setting, as you describe it. Coop, a lesser-known name outside of Arkansas, Grayson Wilson. He's committed to the hometown Hogs. Why should Razorback fans be excited about not just their basketball team, but the future of their football team?
Well, there was a guy from Arkansas who kind of snuck up on our radar last year, and Walker White. He ends up being a top 64 guy for us, ends up signing with Auburn. And this guy, Grayson Wilson, 3-sport athlete, basketball, baseball. You love him especially on the football field as well. And being able to see him in person, I kept looking at my roster saying, who is this? Grayson Wilson committed to Arkansas, but the way that he kind of commanded the football throughout the day, I mentioned the elements, not only with the wind, but his ability to play with accuracy, timing as well. Sometimes it's hard to take those things away from the events, but the good thing is you come back and you say, all right, let me do a little bit more homework on this guy. And the more homework that you do, the more intrigued you are. So I think Arkansas has done a tremendous job with Grayson Wilson. The other thing about him, he had 41 touchdowns last year, only 2 INTs. He had over 3,800 yards passing, He had over 800 yards rushing as well. So he is a multi-dimensional athlete. Not only can he get it done through the air, but he moved well, very comfortable outside the pocket too. So this is definitely a name we're going to go back, revisit. And the third one of these guys, I mean, it's a big year for Grayson Wilson, and the fact that he can make himself some money when it comes to the rankings, and a guy that we're really excited to see.
Cooper, you talk about intrigue, and we have to mention Tramel Jones, the Florida State-bound quarterback, who is also coming out to Tinseltown this summer as part of the Elite 11 finals. What did you like about his performance in Oxford?
Well, he's a little bit different than the three, four mentioned. Those guys are long, lanky frames, got to continue to fill out. Tramel Jones is on the flip side, right? He's 6 feet, 200 pounds. He's pretty stout. He's got a compact frame, but the velocity, the way the ball kind of pops off his hands, you like that with Tramel Jones. One of the first things that you notice in the Florida State commit, you're a little bit surprised. You go back and he's got only a 60% completion rate last year as a passer, but you see him in person. I thought he was one of the most poised passers throughout the entire afternoon. The longer the event went on, the stronger that he kind of performed. So I love the accuracy, the ball placement, the arm talent. It's all there as well. It seems like Mike Norvell, they have a thing for this in terms of the quarterback evaluation, kind of being early, and then everybody else plays catch up. It seems like they're in a really good spot here with Tramel Jones as well.
All right, obviously all the shine was on the quarterbacks, but there were some other positions at the event. Who else stood out among the non-QBs?
Yeah, they had the all-22 combine, which is every other position group gets to work out before the quarterbacks work out. And it's filled with guys from all over the region. And one of those guys that I really liked, that I was excited to see, was 3-star offensive lineman from Mississippi, Mario Nash Jr. And this is a guy that plays tackle, but I think long-term we think he's more of a center. He had a great day. Everything that you want to see from him, he showed very quick, not only in his feet, but his body quickness as well. Did a really good job changing directions, won the majority of his reps in the one-on-one, ended up winning offensive line MVP. And then the other guy is Matthew Parker, who's still trying to make his way in his name, but he had his first full year of varsity football last year. And this is a big kid, 6'6", 290 pounds, got almost a 7-foot wingspan. So this is more of a name to know, file away from later. Mario Nash, Mississippi State, USC, LSU, all involved with him. But the Matthew Parker kid is definitely going to be a name that's going to continue to have eyeballs kind of flow in his direction if he continues to put it together.
Awesome. Coop, thank you so much. Be sure to check out his full, his full report on 247sports.com. Fantastic stuff there. And as always, if you want more in-depth recruiting coverage, where else do you go than the 247 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast? Cooper and 247 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins, they've you covered with episodes throughout the week. You can watch live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Elsewhere this weekend, Overtime's OT7 tournament series happening in Dallas. It'll continue in Big D this upcoming weekend. We'll make stops in Orlando in the coming weeks, with all eyes on the national finals in Tampa later this summer. But right now on this show, national recruiting analyst Mike Roach, he was in Dallas and is now with us here for a full recap. Mike, let's start with the number 2 tight end and top 30 prospect in 2025. That is Lincoln Cure. What did you get from him in this setting?
It's a tough setting for tight ends because, it does, I think, benefit receivers more. But when you see Cure on the hoof, you kind of see what everybody likes about him. He's got a big frame. He's solid. And then that multi-sport background showed up, the basketball, the track, his leaping ability, his physical ability at the catch point, all those things, playing for California Power. Now, he played on a team that had several other tight end type bodies on that team, along with some really talented receivers. But he stood out a couple of times catching balls over the middle and kind of showing off the physicality there.
Keelan Russell, you mentioned this being an event for tight ends or for wide receivers. He's a quarterback headed to SMU. He's been committed there since September. He's been making a ton of recruiting noise. Mike, what did you make of his performance, and what can you tell us about how his recruiting process is shaping up?
It was an incomplete performance, I would say, just from the sense that he was at Texas A&M on a visit on Saturday, so he only played Sunday of the tournament. And as you know, Blair, that's knockout play. So he only got to play 2 games before his team was eliminated. And then in a bit of a, I guess, fun wrinkle that you only see at the 7-on-7 setting is that both teams were wearing white. So he threw a really bad pick 6 early in the game, and I'm fairly certain it was because he thought it was one of his players. They had almost virtually identical jerseys. But, you know, we've seen Keelan so many times this offseason. He's looked so good in so many settings, big arm, ability to throw it with touch, ability to put the ball where he wants it. I think it is shaping up to be a really interesting recruitment. SMU has held his commitment for a long time, but a lot of schools are coming on. He was just at Texas A&M. The Aggies have told him, basically, they're waiting to see what Husan Longstreet does, and where they go from there will depend on if Longstreet's an Aggie or not. If not, Keelan Russell, I think, becomes their top target. When you look at Oregon is starting to make some noise with him and communicate with him a little bit. He's working on scheduling a visit to Alabama this week. He'll be at Texas for their spring game. I think he has an official visit set for Florida as well. So he's going to get around and see some schools. What does that mean for SMU? I still think that they've got a really good shot at keeping him. He does like the vision of Rhett Lashley and Derek King, the quarterback coach there. SMU moving into a Power 4 conference with the ACC is playing in their favor. And I think that, you know, he likes the setup there of kind of being a hometown legend. So I don't think it is a certainty that he ends up somewhere else, but he is definitely looking at his options.
I got to follow up real quick on that because I think it's so interesting. You wrote about the Longstreet situation with Russell and that they actually told him that they're waiting to see what happens. How unique a situation is that to be so upfront and honest with a recruit?
It is very unique. I mean, it's, you know, when he told me that, I thought, well, that's a bold strategy to tell them the truth, you know, because a lot of recruits will get the feelings hurt if they know they're not the top guy on the board. But Russell said he appreciated the honesty from the staff. He appreciated knowing where he was, and that he'll give them as good of a chance as any. I don't think he's taking any of those things personally. He understands, for instance, with a school like Oregon or a school like Texas that already has a quarterback committed, that, you know, he wants to look at them the same way he would look at a school if he was just getting a fresh offer from them. So I think he's got a really level-headed and mature process about this.
Yeah, a new staff there at Texas A&M too, so learning a lot about their early recruiting prowess. Another recruit I want to ask you about, recent USC linebacker commit, Matai Tungla'i. He was in Dallas this weekend. What did you learn from him, just both on the recruiting front, but also performance-wise?
He was awesome, man. And I talked about earlier, tight ends being a tough evaluation in a 7-on. I don't think there's any tougher evaluation than a linebacker because just a lot of times they can be neutralized. But you saw his size, his frame, and what I thought the best was his instincts were on full display. His team, he played for the Trillion Boys, which is one of the bigger names on the national circuit, utilized him in a way I've not seen a lot of teams utilize a hybrid type of player like him, where they kept him at safety and then they move him down into the box in short yardage. And inside the red zone, he was really wreaking havoc on short passes and those quick slants that teams like to throw, kind of using his length, quickness, and reading ability. He recently committed to USC, but he did tell me he's going to honor a couple of the visits that he had previously set. Texas, Washington, and Oklahoma are the 3 schools he's going to see unofficially, and then he said he might return for official visits to those programs. What does that mean for his USC recruitment? I still think he's pretty firm with the Trojans. He told me it would take a ton. It would take a lot to change his mind and get him off of that commitment, and that, you know, this was a school he loved growing up. He loved everything about once he heard the recruiting pitch from them, and he's really excited to be part of that USC class, which seems to be growing by the day.
Speaking of hybrid athletes, Mike, Jet Washington was hard to miss out there. He's about 6'5", the nephew of the late legendary Kobe Bryant, also a basketball star there at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, was playing for Low Pro in Dallas. What did you make of him as a footballer?
Well, he was our alpha dog for the event. And he was, like you said, Blair, not hard to miss. It's my first time seeing him in person. I've heard, of course, other guys on our team, including Blair, talk about him and their impressions of him. So I kind of wanted to get a fresh look. And you know which one he is when Low Pro takes the field. I know that he's getting he's at least profiled by us as a receiver, but Washington told me he's getting a lot of offers at defensive back, and I thought he looked great playing safety, playing corner. For his fluidity, for his size at 6'4", was awesome. I think that, he can play in the slot. He could play deep at safety. Like I said, I even liked him a little bit out at corner. He's a guy that I think that you've really got to see how he continues to grow into that body and then figure out where to stick him on the field. As far as his recruitment, he didn't talk about many schools. He talked a little bit about getting up to UCLA and meeting their new staff, but it was pretty clear from just a few minutes I spent with him that Notre Dame is kind of setting the pace in this recruitment. Washington told me he's just incredibly comfortable with that staff. He likes the vision they have for him. He's trying to get up to South Bend this summer for a visit. And early on, it sounds like Notre Dame is the team to beat here.
Notre Dame is the team to beat in this cycle, currently holding that #1 spot. Spring Texas native Keyshawn Henderson, is he a quarterback? Is he a wide receiver? It's not for me to decide, but how is that affecting his recruitment, Mike?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, he is the best player I've seen on the 7-on-7 circuit this year. He's played mostly receiver and safety in those settings. I think he's got potential as an All-American type of safety. He is incredible. But he wants to play quarterback. And I actually texted a college staff yesterday and said, if I were you, I'd just tell Keyshawn Henderson he can play quarterback and then figure it out later. I mean, he is the type of guy that is worth doing what it takes to get him on campus. He is, because he wants to play quarterback, there's two schools that have indicated to him, hey, we're all in on you as a quarterback and as our primary quarterback in this class. And that's Baylor and Houston. And because of that, both of those schools are kind of holding a little bit of an edge for him early in the recruitment. This is a guy with offers from Michigan and Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma and a lot of national schools. But Baylor and Houston have a great shot here because they've committed to the idea of him playing quarterback at the next level. Henderson told me that early push from them has shown a lot of trust in him as a prospect, and he wants to reward that and trust them as a program. So I think it's smart for those schools to utilize kind of their spot in the recruitment and say, hey, we're all in on you playing this position. We'll do what it takes, and it's rewarding them early on.
Mike, we saw earlier on the graphic that this tournament will continue this coming weekend in Dallas. What should we expect from the event this Saturday?
We'll have some new teams coming in. I think some of the teams from last week are returning again. So it was a lot of good competition. I think Overtime has a pretty well-run 7-on-7 event for as far as those things can be well-run. And a lot of talent out there. So we're looking forward to being back and seeing it again.
All right, before we let you go, real quick, we have a viewer question from a Chris B. He wants to know what's the latest in the recruitment of 5-star wide receiver Khalil Lockett. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Khalil Lockett just finished a visit at Texas this weekend. He's been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks, seeing Florida State, seeing Texas, seeing Ohio State. I think Texas had a really strong visit. They made a very strong impression on him, and I think they're moving their way into that top group now. And they had a lot of room to make up in this recruitment. They had they were behind. They didn't have a great lead. So they're getting back up to the top of that group. I think Florida State is in there. I think LSU is in there. And we'll see kind of how the rest of these spring visits shake out. He's at LSU next, and then Texas A&M is, I think, his final visit this spring before he takes his summer officials. But it's shaping up to be a really competitive recruitment going into the summer.
Awesome. Mike, thank you so much for that update and for all the great updates. You can read his coverage of all of the various events, the ones that he went to this weekend, the one that'll go to next weekend, all of it on 247sports.com. And as always, become a VIP member to get the best information on all things college football. And I got one more game in the season for all my basketball fans out there. VIP membership will help you out as well. In less than a week, on April 14th, the top uncommitted quarterback in the class, Husan Longstreet, is set to make his college decision. We will bring on our friend Tom Loy in just a second to preview that decision. But Blair, before we bring him on, I got to ask you, he is a prospect, not far from you in California. I did use the map. Corona is not far from you. So from what you've seen from him, what type of skill set does the number 5 quarterback in the class have?
A skill set that's good enough for other programs to tell other top 100 quarterbacks that they're waiting on Husan Longstreet to make a decision. You know, he's a dynamic passer. He's great outside the pocket. I love what he's able to do pre-snap and recognizing where he's going to go with the football. He escapes pressure. He's able to buy himself extra time. He's one of the better Inland Empire quarterbacks that we've seen since the likes of Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud. So he's in that same air among the quarterbacks from Southern California that are not from the Trinity League, which is obviously the best league in high school football. We love his arm talent. We just saw him a couple weeks ago at the Elite 11 Los Angeles, where he was the alpha and punched his ticket to the Elite 11 finals. So he's not just a great athlete, but he's a great passer, and he's getting ready to come off the board. And Emily, he's going to be leading off our War Daddy series. It's making a comeback this week. I know we've been waiting, we've been anticipating. So the readers over at 247 Sports, make sure you stay locked into the website for the kickoff of the War Daddy series, a closer look at the recruitment of Husan Longstreet.
My personal favorite series. So that is fantastic news to hear, Blair. Yeah, he is the #1 player in the state of California, #5 quarterback, and 28th ranked overall player. And right now, Texas A&M leads with 3 total crystal balls, but he is also considering Auburn, Ole Miss, and Oregon. Let's bring on national recruiting analyst Tom Loy to help us break down this decision. And we're going to go school by school. So all of those programs will be well represented. Let's start with Auburn. What's the latest with Longstreet and the Tigers?
Yeah, before we get into Auburn, let me just say, like, this recruitment has gotten way more wild than I expected.
Really?
I'm honestly not sure anything should surprise me in this day and age of recruiting, but, here we are. Regarding Auburn, I was told the initial plan was to shut it down, make a decision on April 14th. And that was before he ever stepped foot on Auburn's campus again. But then it all changed. He took visits to A&M, Ole Miss, Oregon, and Auburn. And there's a strong feeling inside the Auburn building that this recent visit was a game changer. There's some people in that office that actually believe this trip was a needle mover, and the Tigers are currently on top less than a week from his commitment announcement. So it's not necessarily my opinion, my take, but that's the feeling inside that building.
Well, Tom, and this is a team that probably needs him the most among these Final Four. Let's be real. Auburn in the SEC last year was last in the conference in passing. So Hugh Freeze is starting off in a way at the bottom, at the basement from a quarterback position standpoint. They did bring in Walker White in the previous recruiting class. And I think Auburn, obviously, the only way for them to go is up. And a player like Husan Longstreet, if you're adding him to the quarterback room, makes you more dynamic, makes you more explosive. That competition in the spring of 2025 would be one of the more intriguing ones for us to monitor for sure.
Blair, you could even argue that they could use him right now, headed into this upcoming season. That is the Auburn quarterback situation, but they will have to wait, and they will have to compete against the other schools who want a piece of him, including Ole Miss. So where do things stand with the Rebels, Tom?
Ole Miss is an intriguing option. I know you just used that word for Auburn, Blair, but Ole Miss is intriguing in my opinion. On paper, it seems like the pairing of Longstreet and head coach Lane Kiffin would be outstanding. The Rebels staff believes they had a great visit. They believe they have a shot, but there isn't a ton of confidence or optimism coming from sources connected to Ole Miss that they're going to eventually be the landing spot for Longstreet. And if they miss on Longstreet, we talked about it last week on the show with Andrew Ivins and Cooper Petagna. I just don't know exactly where they're going to go. There's a lot of options out there, but and obviously we all know Kiffin loves the transfer portal. So if Ole Miss can't get it done with Longstreet, they obviously could get Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame quarterback commit. He's clearly a top target for him, but Ole Miss would really love to get Longstreet.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin, one of the most creative, if not the most creative play caller in college football. Tom, I know you're a big fan of the play call sheet toss-ups 20 yards up in the field. I think Husan Longstreet would be a player that would make Lane Kiffin throw out his arm. He might need Tommy John surgery considering all the playmaking ability he would make in the SEC. I think this is a phenomenal fit, maybe the best fit in the top 4 group that we're seeing here, considering what he's able to do with a player like Jackson Dart over the last couple of years, attracting the quarterback talent that Lane Kiffin has. Husan Longstreet and a Lane Kiffin offense in the SEC. I mean, sign me up for that team in dynasty mode over in calling that new college football game.
Well, neither Auburn or Ole Miss have a quarterback committed in this class, but the next school I'm going to ask about, Oregon, actually does, Akili Smith Jr. And overall, Tom, I mean, they feel kind of like the outlier geographically, but where is Dan Lanning and company in this race?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Oregon does already have a quarterback commit in Akili Smith Jr., top 100 talent, but that hasn't stopped them from continuing to recruit multiple quarterbacks and pushing hard for quarterbacks across the country. So Longstreet's been the top target for the Ducks for quite some time. There's even been some chatter that they're recruiting Texas quarterback commit KJ Lacey, TCU commit Ty Hawkins, just to name a few. But Longstreet's always been the priority, the guy for Oregon. So that said, like with Ole Miss, talking to some people as of this afternoon, this morning, there just doesn't seem to be a ton of confidence coming from them regarding their chances at landing the coveted target. But I do think that they're going to continue recruiting the position. They're going to push for other guys. We'll see what happens. I feel like they need to be going all in for guys like Keelan Russell. I already mentioned Lacey and Hawkins. So they're not going to slow down anytime soon. They want competition in that room, and they're going to do all they can to land two this cycle.
Yeah, and think about what they did in the previous cycle and the first true one for Will Stein, the offensive coordinator there at Oregon. They had two quarterbacks committed for basically the entire cycle. They ended up losing one. They only bring in Luke Moga, who's already on campus and a part of that quarterback room. But yeah, I think Husan Longstreet gives them that dynamic weapon if you were to go there, the type of quarterback that we've been accustomed to seeing at Oregon. I think a better and a more refined Bo Nix type who can move the chains with a stronger arm and a better runner who can extend plays. I'd be really, really interested to see what he looks like in the Big Ten. Obviously, looks like an SEC battle right now, but Husan Longstreet in the Big Ten would also, open up a lot of eyes.
More SEC team to talk about. The presumed leader in the clubhouse, Texas A&M. Tom, how big is the gap between the Aggies and everybody we just talked about?
Early on, the buzz was all Texas A&M. I probably could have and should have thrown in a 24/7 Sports crystal ball pick for the Aggies immediately after I spoke with Longstreet for the first time back in January. The Aggies were doing and continue to do an excellent job with them. Mike Elko, Colin Klein, the entire staff has laid everything out, pushed all the right buttons, and have long been considered the front runner. But as of today, at least according to sources close to the situation, and like I said earlier, like talking to guys this afternoon, I still like Texas A&M to get this one done. I believe that a pick to another school would probably shock and surprise the staff in College Station. In all honesty, I could see this one working out for the Aggies. I think they get this done, and USC fans are not going to like me for this, which they already don't love me at all for kind of covering Notre Dame. But I could honestly see Auburn potentially playing spoiler to both Georgia and USC as it relates to current Trojans quarterback commit Julian Lewis. So in a perfect world for USC fans, as it relates to Lewis, Auburn pulls off the perceived upset and lands Longstreet. It's just something to keep an eye on. So keep an eye on Lewis potentially landing elsewhere.
We love the hypothetical dominoes, Tom. That's you're big braining us right now. That's really interesting because I just spoke to a quarterback this past weekend, another top 24/7 prospect, not named Keelan Russell, who told me, yeah, there's a bunch of schools that are kind of contacting me, but they want to know what's going to happen with Husan Longstreet. So although he's the number 5 quarterback in this class, he's being the top uncommitted player right now at that position. He has a lot of leverage, and a lot of the schools are waiting to see what the next move is going to be. So those dominoes are always going to be tumbling. Although we don't know what the A&M offense will look like under first-year offensive coordinator Colin Klein. We obviously have an understanding of what that looked like at Kansas State, and they averaged over 80 yards more during those 2 seasons that he was at K-State than they did before he took over as OC. So he brings a lot of quarterback dynamic looks. He loves a runner. He loves a guy that can move the chains with his feet. He's got the big playability, and I think A&M, with everything they're doing on the recruiting front, if they land a Husan Longstreet to lead the charge at quarterback, they could take that next step under Coach Elko.
I love these really tight recruiting battles in April, because I'm sure that when April 14th hits and he makes his decision, all the schools that lose out are just going to quit and they're not going to continue to be in contact with him. It'll be a very interesting recruitment going forward. Tom, thank you so much for breaking that down. But anytime that you come on, Blair mentioned it, big brain, we got a lot of questions for you. So we got a viewer question here from a Ken W asking, you recently logged a crystal ball pick for top 247 offensive lineman Justin Hausenhudel. I hope I got that right. If I did not, I had a lot of fun saying it. He's out of Georgia. You have him to land with Georgia Tech. So what makes you feel so confident about the Yellow Jackets here?
Well, as it relates to just connecting with the kid and really making him a priority, I think that Georgia Tech is doing a phenomenal job. I really like what they're doing. Offensive line coach Jeep Wade has led the way. And at least from what I've gathered, the staff is simply out recruiting everybody, any other top contender for him. So no question, there's other schools that are doing a good job. You got North Carolina, Clemson, USC, and a few others. But and one other note that, Hasenhüttl was injured and he suffered a knee injury and it was pretty bad. But from what I'm told, Georgia Tech didn't bat an eye, and that carried a ton of weight for him and his family. So they continue to show love, continue to make him feel wanted, and they kept pushing for his commitment. So I feel great about my crystal ball pick for Georgia Tech, and I could see it getting done sooner rather than later.
All right, this next one comes from an Aaron G asking, Top 247 offensive tackle Carty Smith is set to commit this week. So what can you tell us as he's set to make his decision?
This one's also been pretty interesting to follow. Been going back and forth between a couple top contenders. You could throw Auburn, Mississippi State. Pretty much that's the top two in my opinion. I think you can call Florida State somewhat of a sleeper. They absolutely think they have a shot. But and to take it a step further, I think all of the schools in his top group are doing a good job and feel somewhat optimistic. But I think in the end, it's going to come down to the Tigers and the Bulldogs. But as of today, if I had to make a pick, I'm leaning towards Auburn. I think the Tigers, Hugh Freeze, I think they get the job done, but look for something to come down potentially as early as Wednesday.
Looking forward to it. We know when it comes down that you will be all over it. Tom, thank you so much for being a guest here. Blair, thank you as always for the fantastic work that you do. You can see both of them, more of them, on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. And get excited because coming up next week, that's right, it's Transfer Portal Palooza once again. The spring window opens. We will be live on Tuesday, breaking it all down. So tune in at 9 a.m. Eastern to get the latest on all things Transfer Portal. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the 247 Sports College Football Recruiting Show. Thanks for watching.